Howdy. Okay, so these are the cards. I haven't touched them, not that it really matters, but I like these things to be fresh. I don't like it to feel like I had any sort of preset anything. I like it to be me just reading as the energies come to me, which is why I try to make a point to do this all at once, but because I already pulled the cards in the last video, I just decided to leave this as is. So if you're watching this right now, you don't have to watch the first one. It's mostly just me filling up space as I'm pulling the cards. If that's something that's important to you, it's there. But we're going to get into reading them now. Okay. So I'm going to start with the Oracle card, and then the tarots are going to be the clarifiers. And again, I haven't looked at any of these. Any of them that came out face up, I immediately turned back over and put in order that they came out. So this should all be a pretty clear energy. Whirl? I think it's whirl. It's in the reverse. Okay, wait. WHORL. So it's like whirlpool, like whirl, but it's like, it means to spin. I just haven't seen it like that. I think I've maybe seen the word before. I know what it means, but I haven't seen it like that. This is such an interesting deck because it does randomly come out with these things, but whirl. So like, it almost looks like the Milky Way, right? Like it's like an existential cycling, not just that though, it's cycloning into itself. Into itself. Cycling into itself. There's an image that I've seen online that at first looks like it's just going around and around and around and around into a spiral, right? And it's like the idea of spiraling can feel very like, it feels like you're falling into a void, but at the same time, it almost like when you're looking at it in a 2D depiction, it has this sense of like being monotonous and being consistent in a way that like doesn't end up going anywhere, right? It just feels like you're just going around and around and around and around for what? But then it turns and shows you that 2D image in a 3D, and you see that the spiral is actually coming down, and it creates this whole platform of dimension within this spiral. And it mentions that even if you end up going back around the same seeming sort of way, it's never going to be the same place, the same time, because time's always changing. And because every experience that you experience ends up adding to you as a person. It changes you somehow. Even if you swear that it doesn't, it does, because just prior to that experience, you were somebody that had never gone through that experience. So even if you try not to take anything of it and try not to let it affect you, you truly are different after every moment of every day. And it kind of helps to put things in perspective that way. And that's what the main point was that sometimes you look at things and they seem so monotonous, or they seem so consistently, what would be the word, like pointless almost. But when you look at them in perspective, suddenly it takes on this whole other dimensional form of realizing that your perspective is constantly changing. And that's what I see from this too, like it being the inside of her face, it being that her inner perception, your inner perception is always changing. Okay, so I'm going to turn all these cards over at the same time, but the way that I have them is, this is the one that fell out first, second, and third. None of them fell out together that way either, so it's pretty sequential. Okay. The Lovers. Okay, we have the Lovers in reverse. This is such a funny card though. I've never seen it, but it's got this big chubby dude that has like a pigtail on his head, or behind his head. Oh, that's interesting. It's horns. It looks like a pigtail, and I'm only saying that, I guess, because he's fat and he has a pie on his crotch. But really, it's horns. They're just flesh colored, and he only has the one horn. The other one is broken off. So, which is very interesting. Like I said, these Adventure Time cards tend to take on like almost an opposing reading concept as the regular Rider-Waite Tarot. They're so fascinating to me that way. In the regular Rider-Waite Tarot, it is an angel that is above the two lovers, very different from the devil. But in this, it's technically a pan-like, Baphomet-like, devil-like, Lucifer-like. I wish that I had the character. I wish that I had a picture of the regular Rider-Waite Lovers card, because I can't remember if the sun is behind it or if the sun's actually coming out of it. This card just takes on a whole different meaning. Okay, what I'm getting from this card in the upright, it's so cute. I wish that I could remember this elephant's name. She's like this old, funny, goofy elephant. And I've seen this purple pig character with her in another card before in the deck. So I imagine that they must be, and now that they're in the Lovers card, like, they must have had a love story in the episodes. Like I said, this might even be a main. I'm assuming all of these characters are characters throughout the seasons, and I'm just not well aware of them because I only watched the first couple seasons of Adventure Time. But so they're coming together. They look quite happy. There's this little house, and it's like this sense of them coming together into this union, right? The house itself has you can't really see it, but right here is an actual handle. It looks like a jack-in-the-box handle. It's a turnable handle. And so it's almost giving me that idea too, that like with this character popping out, that like you turn the wheel of this house, you know, that they're bringing together, this sense of home, and it pops out first a heart, and then this pie, which actually also looks like a crown, and it's over the heart. So it's just like this whole part of the image is very pleasant and very sweet. Also because you have the tree here that's full of leaves, and this tree has pretty much lost all its leaves, and it gives a sense of like throughout every season this union, or it's moving into those seasons. But this fat guy, although he looks quite pleasant, he looks happy, and there's a big old sun behind him. He's giving me bad vibes, and it's not just because of the horns. He gave me bad vibes before that, when I thought that this was just a pigtail, and like this person with pigtails, it's giving me this idea of like them coming together and cultivating a home, but he's coming in. It's almost like the creation of them bringing the home together is like manifesting him, and he seems gluttonous. He just seems like he instead of being the divine that would be bringing in certain blessings, he's giving me this idea of a divine character that's like looking to take what is being. He really just wants a piece of this pie, right? But it is in the reverse. So with the idea of looking at things from a different perspective, giving yourself time, moving in a different direction, letting life move you in a different direction, and then looking at things from a different perspective, as far as this is concerned. It's just kind of giving me like, don't fear. Like normally this card in the reverse would be like that this union isn't happening. It could even potentially be referring to a breakup. But instead I'm receiving this, don't fear what appears to be a lack of union. Don't let that bring you down. Like, don't like get into any sort of negative thoughts about like, I thought that this was going to happen, and it doesn't seem to be, because when you look at it from a different perspective, you will see that there's actually so much more happening than what appears to be on the surface. Because it's also that too, like they're looking directly at each other, like almost like they don't see everything that's going behind the surface. But it's not that it's necessarily something to worry about. It's almost that the worry itself would be, it's just it doesn't really fit. It doesn't really make sense. It isn't valid. Because when you were looking at things, if you're looking at things from a different perspective, you'll see that there's something greater going on at this time. Under that, we have this Two of Coins. Dude, these cards are so trippy. Two of Coins in the upright. Now, I don't know what this character is, but they have these sort of like, well, how would I describe this on their shirt? I don't think you can necessarily see it. The designs, yeah, a little bit. The designs that they have on their shirt is very like, it reminds me of like, it's like systematic, like kind of like a circuit board type appearance. But they have Metatron's cube in their right hand, and they have a fourth dimensional cube. Well, I guess it's a third dimensional cube in their left hand. Metatron's cube, right, is the one that's almost like, that is the fourth dimensional. They have that one in their right hand. They have the third dimensional cube in their left hand, and then they have the reason I said fourth dimensional in the first place. So the cube that they have, this dark cube up here at their head, and they're all levitating, right? The one that they have up at their head is a cube shape, but you can't see through it. So it looks just like a box, right? You can assume the sides that it has. But really, because you can't see through it, it only has the 6 sides, like a die, where this fourth dimensional one is taking on this other aspect because you can see through it. I don't know if you can in here, but you can actually see through it, which means that you're not there isn't just the sides that you can touch. There's also the other side of those sides that's being reflected, and you can see them, but you can't actually access them. Where then Metatron's cube would take on this 5th dimensional aspect of, what I've learned about it is that, like, if you have a see-through cube and you hold it up to the light, the shadow that it casts is 2-dimensional, but because it's a shadow of a multi-dimensional, essentially, object, it's actually a 3-dimensional shadow. And that same concept of something being innately 2-dimensional when it's actually 3-dimensional because it's a shadow of the 4th dimension is equal to what this cube, this 4-dimensional cube, would be if it were considered the shadow being cast by a 5th dimensional object. If that makes sense. Okay. And they're kind of out in the universe. There's a whole bunch of stars behind them. It looks like they're just on the ground. There's even like a little baseboard, and then there's all these stars. They look friendly. So it's giving me this idea of like the mathematics of things, the geometry, the sacred geometry of things, the physics of things, the way that things break down into measurable concepts. But then it's also alluding to like, and this whole thing is kind of alluding to there always being something slightly beyond our capacity to be able to measure it as well. Now we have these things being measured, but the fact that they're able to be held this way is also like, because they're being measured when there's something else so much further outside of that. Now, if I know anything about Adventure Time as I'm thinking about this, like this looks like such a pleasant, friendly character. But that's the thing about most of these cards, as pleasant and friendly as they look, they tend to take on really deep, dark concepts and ideas. So for some reason I'm getting this idea that, like, although this character, like, in this card, specifically in this position right now as it stands, is completely legitimate, is just like a positive concept, and somewhat valuable to the balance between, like, our personal experience and our personal union with our desired reality, and kind of entrusting that to the universe, in a way that we can't fully understand. The fact that this is in the reverse now too is giving me this idea of, like, it coming back out. Like, the whole way that we process most of these concepts is, we have the math first, we have the numbers first, and then we're breaking them down and trying to, like, understand them in a tangible realm. Because numbers are just a language, and one that we don't often always understand perfectly, because although we can validate ourselves essentially even as a series of numbers, our active experience isn't quite like that. But the fact that this is in the upright too is giving me, like, to trust in your intuition even when what you're seeing tangibly isn't seeming to be in alignment with what you desire, or what you believe even to be real, or even what you can prove to be real. Like I said, there's something greater going on. And so it's like, even when everything's seeming to kind of close in on itself and cycle into itself, and everything seems to be, like, based in some sort of destruction, if you've got that, like, negative cynicism going on, there's something greater at play. But under that we have this Nine of Wands in the reverse. So we've got this snow character who has a wand. Let's see, there's 4, 8, okay. So he has a wand. Half of the wands are on fire. Half of the wands are on fire. 3/4 of the wands have pears growing on them. So, like, half of the ones that have pears growing on them are also on fire. Or 1/4 of them are on fire. But I'm assuming the fire must have burnt off the rest of the pears. And this snow guy is kind of melting. And it looks like sweat. It looks like he's, like, sweating because he's melting. And he's holding a wand for his protection. But then there's this like, little dog thing that's coming up, and, like, hey, like, that just gave me some deja vu. It's coming up to him and, like, being all friendly with him. But this dog is also, like, a fire creature, and it's causing this, like, smoke. It's, like, melting his leg. And he seems kind of like, he doesn't know he wants to be friendly to the dog, but at the same time, like, this dog is obviously, like, lighting everything on fire. And the deja vu that I got was the last client that I had here in Texas. The way that I met them was when I was literally on my way to the shelter, because I had left the apartment that I had been staying in, because the landlord was making me wildly uncomfortable and I felt very unsafe. I was sleeping at night with the door locked and with my knife on me, because he would unannounced come in, because he had a key to the front door, and would come in and just start doing stuff in the house. And I became very suspect that there might be, like, cameras somewhere or something. He just made me feel like he was watching me, and, like, he was always keeping up on me, and, like, he would only hit me up when I happened to be home. But if I like, it was just weird because I would like go for walks. I'd walk 3 miles a day. I'd like go hang out over by the Menards where I could get Wi-Fi over there, and would watch movies and stuff like outside of the house. Would like stay out of the house at different times, and like it just was weird. I felt like I was being watched. And then he would show up at like 10 or 11 o'clock at night unannounced. And there was a couple times that he had like tried to open the bedroom door, and I just pretended to be asleep. And thankfully the door was locked. Didn't have a key to the bedroom door. But it was one of those things that made me incredibly nervous and uncomfortable, because what if I was asleep and hadn't locked the door? I could have just easily walked into the bedroom that I'm sleeping in. It made me feel very unsafe. So I'm already feeling kind of paranoid. That's a pretty common thing when I'm alone in like uncertain spaces. I've built off of this to the point where like now I'm comfortable more than ever being alone. But it's also one of those things that I'm like keenly aware of the fact that like I'm a single woman, and you know, a lot of people perceive me to be vulnerable or like exploitable, an easy target, essentially, being a single woman, especially if they like know anything about like, okay, oh, she's not from here, oh, she doesn't have family around, oh, she doesn't have a partner that's going to be checking up on her and things like that, right? So I decided that I was just going to go to the women's shelter because I was kind of really tired of feeling just scared on the street constantly and scared in different spaces because of men. I was like, I'm just going to surround myself with women. I'm tired of feeling like a potential victim. So I was on my way to the shelter. And I met this elderly woman who was in a wheelchair, an electric wheelchair. And she was looking for a caregiver, and she had a couch for me to sleep on. So it just so happened that I'm a caregiver. So I was like, oh, this is perfect. I just happened to have missed my bus, and that's why I ended up at the one that I was at. She had happened to miss her bus too, which is why she ended up to be where she was at. We happened to meet at the same time. It seemed like God had just brought us together, right? But the reason I even started talking to her in the first place was because her dog came up to me, and just like this, like he came running up to me and like was just immediately very friendly to me. And I had lost both of my dogs the year prior. That year. I didn't know that my one dog had passed yet, or she hadn't been passed yet. But I'd lost my other dog and didn't have my dogs with me and very much missed them. So having this dog come up to me, that's cute, and he's so cute. He's so friendly, and I just immediately started petting him and was talking like a little kid to him. And he was loving it. It was really, really sweet. And then she came up and started talking to me. And like I said, at the time, I'm already kind of high vibing in a state of paranoia, just because of what my life has become at this point. So any of the red flags that I happened to see, or any of the different like vibes that I was feeling that were off, or that were like kind of letting me know what I was getting myself into, I kind of put on the back burner. And that was quite a wild time. And to think that it all started with this. So, you know, it's kind of giving me that impression, like he doesn't, but in this, like, no, it's just giving me those vibes, but it is in the reverse. And so in telling that story and then in seeing how these all line up, it's giving me this impression of like, if anybody else would have been in that situation, and if anybody else would have been me, like with my intuition for these things, I'm not sure they would have went forward in taking that position. At first it seemed like one thing and stuff, but like I said, there were these different red flags, there were these different things that I noticed, and like, I think especially after being there for a period of time, I don't think anybody else would have stayed there as long as I did. I know nobody else would have. Everybody thought that I was stupid for that. Anybody that hears the stories is like, what the fuck is wrong with you? Like, do you want to die? Why didn't you leave there? Like, what is wrong? But the thing was that, like, I'd already been cultivating these concepts. Despite being in these situations that felt very unsafe and uncertain, I had those same exact situations were cultivating this deep faith in a grander universe for me. And were also moving me out of the path of innate codependency that I'd always struggled with, and were moving me into a position of being genuinely confident within myself in a way that I truly had never been prior. So despite the seeming surface dangers and toxicities and issues that I was experiencing, there was something so much deeper being cultivated in me. It was nothing that you could necessarily account for. Like I said, even looking at this, like, this is such a friendly little character, and it's such a friendly little card. There's nothing nefarious about this seeming. But my senses know better. My senses just sense things. I already know. If something seems like that's, like I said, with the Adventure Time, like when something seems so pleasant a very certain way, you already know what to expect, right? So, like, even going into those things, I already knew. Like, I could hear the universe and my guides telling me, like, this is about to be a very important time in your life. There's going to be a lot of, like, this is about to be really crazy. This is about to be really crazy. So just lean on us and trust us. Lean more into us. Like, I didn't have to take that path, by the way. There was a different path, and I think that had I taken the path of just being like, you know what, I think I'm still just going to go to the shelter. I appreciate it. I'm just not in a position to help you out right now, truly. I hope the best for you. And then just went about my merry way. Or if before things started to get really crazy, I would have left even. No, those would have been two totally different. Anything could have been totally different. But when I realized that there was a specific path, when I saw what was being offered through that, but at the cost of the work that was being done, I accepted it. I knew nothing was going to be the same after that. I actually knew a lot of different things that, like, even now is hard for me to admit that I knew going into it. But I did. And it's one of those things too, like, despite the fact that he had, like, this entire, field of pears, or this little forest or whatever, grove of pears growing, and this fire's burning it, it's kind of this, and, like, melting him even to a degree. It's a couple things. One, if you have a snowman and you melt him, or he melts partially and then refreezes, he becomes hardened. He becomes quite harder. He's no longer made out of soft snow. It becomes ice because of the melting. So there was an aspect of becoming harder that I was willing to accept. It's always within a balance of things, but that was something I was looking for. Because I didn't, like I said, I didn't want to keep feeling like a constant vulnerable victim. But even with the fires, I had learned when I was in California several years ago, I was there and had seen a whole bunch of the devastation from the forest fires that had been just devouring the area at that time. But I remember somebody explaining to me that this is how it's always been. It might be worse now, or that a lot of these fires are man-made, where they used to just be natural. But there's always been forest fires, and that is, in fact, how the redwoods have grown up in the first place. And that the fires are actually needed in order to develop the redwoods, because a redwood sapling can only grow in high carbonated soil. And so you literally need all of this burnt ash in the soil in order for redwood saplings to grow. And now most of the redwoods, are hundreds of years old and stuff, but there's also a lot of logging and stuff. There's a lot of different issues with the fact that, like, the redwood population or whatever has diminished over time. So as devastating as it seemed to see all of these forest fires, some people were looking at it with this positive eye of like, but this is what's necessary in order to bring a new growth, you know, and embracing this, embracing the uncertainty. Okay. So that's like one story, I guess, because I have 3 of them out here. So we'll see what comes after that. Mount of Luna. Oh, geez. What a card. So we have some virginesque women dancing around a fire with each other. There's an owl and a snake. They're dancing under the moon, a very large moon. Which is interesting because it's waning. It's a waning moon moving into a new moon. Yeah. Okay, so, and we're on the Mount of Luna, the moon, the Mount of the Moon. The snake is actually moving through a whole bunch of crystals. There's flowers in front of that, but there's actually crystals that the snake is moving through. And then there's this owl, which is also interesting because the owl normally is a predator of a snake. But in this, I'm getting this concept of like, well, even because the owl even has like this little like star on his forehead. And so I'm really getting this being like, it's quite a witchy card, right? But it's like, yeah, that feminine intuition, feminine power, and being able to trust one's divine feminine that way. The moon is also a feminine symbol in comparison to the sun. So this is all just about the power of a woman. But it is in the reverse. You know, and I think that that was, it's such an interesting thing because like I said, like what had driven me into the position that I was in the first place was feeling like, you know what, I've always been a bit misogynist because I was raised by misogynists. And I've had to work through that a lot in my years to be able to actually form healthy relationships with women and friendships with women. But even in general, I still, especially because women just become more and more feministic nowadays, the average woman, I still find it hard to have relationships with women. I don't always appreciate them. I have a lot of mommy issues, and yeah, it's taken a lot for me just to embrace my own femininity as something strong and powerful and secure, not just as a weakness. Because I was raised to believe that femininity is innately weak, where masculinity is innately strong. So I was raised by macho men who dogged on women and disrespected women, and I've come to understand the irony of those things and how ultimately everything is really in a balance. But I still struggle within myself with those concepts. When I decided that I was going to go to this women's shelter, I was exciting myself. I was excited about it, actually, because I was like, this is an opportunity now for me to really step into being a proud woman and to being surrounded by women and to feel protected by women. What does that mean, you know? But I was also quite intimidated, and that also has been something that I never really had looked forward to, which I think is why when this opportunity was presented to me, yes, there was so much that came out of it that I'm so thankful for, but there was also so much I lost in it. Like, everything. Everything that I hadn't already lost, I lost in this situation. Now, granted, that was a choice that I made to go into that cycle, and I came out better for it, but I didn't need to do that. I could have just gone to the shelter, and had I had been focused more on having this concept in the upright of feminine power and embracing other women this way, yeah, it would have completely changed everything. I think I've always been timid about those things as well, because traditionally because I was raised Christian, and traditionally women coming together and embracing their power has always been considered a form of witchcraft. At the same time, I actually did that prior to getting down to Texas. When I had been in Missouri, I met these hippie girls who lived out of their vans and buses, and they lived on the road and had been doing so. The one girl had been doing it since she was like 14, 15 years old. And the other two women had children, and they were living this way. And being around them, I stayed with them for a week, and like being around them was hugely powerful for me. It really helped me find a strength in myself. At the same time, the owner of the land that we were staying on was a man and a farmer, and a younger dude. I mean, he was only in like his late 40s, I think, and like a hippie dude, and he's cool with these girls and everything like that. But that did create an interesting dynamic, because he was like at one point attracted to me, and it wasn't that I wasn't attracted to him. I was attracted to him to different degrees, but I wasn't trying to be with him in any way. I was really trying to embrace the women that I was around, and this idea of being a powerful single woman. And the women noticed that dynamic, and how there was like, and they had been asked, like, do you feel like he's like preying on your femininity that way? And I was like, I think I'm doing it to myself by making myself available to those types of things when I'm not even available to those types of things. And they're like, you're not sleeping with him. And I was like, I don't know, and I'm not trying to. But I haven't set those boundaries in that way, where like I've been even in my head, like open to still interacting with this masculine energy a certain way. And I think that's just because I haven't fully embraced this feminine aspect yet. And I watched, we like during the week too, like we all kind of got in on it, where like each of us was struggling, trying to figure out this innate balance between our masculine and feminine energies. And, where it initially had been so easy for us to embrace each other that way, it suddenly just got difficult. And I was like, I should leave. I think I'm influencing this negatively. I need to leave. When I'm not in balance, like that's how my energy is. It's very powerful, and it affects situations around me. And so it's almost like I was raised around men, right? And I was raised like with my older brothers, and both of my parents are misogynists. So like when I put myself in a position of being low, of being more disrespected than I am respected, there's a security there because of what I've grown with, and because then my power isn't being validated. Where like as soon as my power starts to be validated for being the woman that I am, especially like as a single woman, like it's extremely influential, and everybody can feel it. When I walk into a room, they can feel my feminine energy, and strong people love it and are very much attracted to it, find it magnetic, and love to encourage it. And that becomes intimidating for me, because I'm not accustomed to that. I'm not accustomed to it being recognized. In fact, I'm accustomed to it being actively hidden and actively try to be destroyed and exploited in different ways. So to have it be respected and validated is it's something I'm still learning how to be comfortable with, right? Which is likely why this is in reverse. But that was part of it, because like there's this concept that like it's very witchcraft. It's witchcraft. Oh, when women are empowered with each other, they're witches. And the farmer had even said that at one point, because we as women decided, we had told them, we're like, we're going to have a campfire tonight. We literally was essentially this. We were like, we're going to have a campfire tonight. And for a while he was there, and we were like making music and stuff like that, and we were all dancing and we're all just having a good time. And then at one point we were like, okay, he was like, okay, he was planning on going to bed anyways, and we're like, okay, well, we're gonna have girl time then, and we're going to turn this into a girl thing, so no boys allowed, essentially. And he's like, oh, what, you guys are going to be practicing witchcraft out here? Which is just like this innate concept that like as soon as women get together, they start becoming very witchy and they start practicing witchcraft. This is something I have believed in my own heart as I was raised that way and have seen in different ways where like, and I have, yeah, I mean, it's something that I do struggle with. But like this card isn't supposed to be negative. It's only negative because I'm seeing it in the reverse. This is actually supposed to be something very definitively powerful. And it's the same idea of like there being an owl and a snake, which are, according to Christian history, you know, demonic. And like, I don't believe that. I believe that they're powerful and that they speak of an innate tuition. And I believe that Christianity in of itself has specifically been used and set up to block individuals from their intuition and to block us from our divine feminine, male and female alike, so that we are far more willing to trust something outside of ourselves than we are to trust ourselves. And that division of ourselves with our highest power has, it's part of a control tactic in order to have, you know, certain people be able to control other certain people. And the certain people that are in control when we are disconnected this sort of way are ultimately people given to AI, to be honest. If you really want to break it down and really want to get that deep, like, they're not people serving a natural order of things. They're people serving a greater order that's been established, that doesn't actually belong here, that is only using all of this reality in order to conjure itself. Okay, hold on, because that's a lot. Okay. But it was funny because we did make a bunch of music and dance around the fire naked, topless, not naked, but topless, singing and dancing. So witchy. Okay. We have the Eight of Wands in the upright, the Wheel of Fortune in the upright, and Strength in the upright. The last time I read this Eight of Wands, it read differently than it ever has, and it read as somebody trying to steal this musical instrument or this way of making music from somebody else, and they're kind of running with what they've stolen, and like people are trying to get them for it, but they're evading those wands, and they're, you know, I've got this. And then, like, I'm reading these all together because that's the way that they came out for me right now. This Wheel of Fortune is quite scary. This peppermint looks very scary. He's got a snake and a bristle branch, and there's all these weird, creepy creatures. And then the Strength card is so fascinating to me, too. The Page of Swords in this deck looks like the actual traditional Strength card, where it has a woman next to a tiger, or a lion, or a bear, depending on what cards you're using. But in this one, Strength is just Jake, but it's Jake with this violin, and it's almost like Jake is the lion. Jake is this powerful beast, but embracing his vulnerability, embracing his creativity is his strength in this way. And it's so true. Jake is such a powerful character for that. He is always, his strength truly is in being able to, in a very purely, like, he is healthy masculine all day. He is able to embrace his vulnerability in a way that's like so strong. Like, he can be in a situation that's terrifying and incredibly uncertain and have no resources whatsoever, And his attitude will still be like, yeah, but we'll figure it out, man. It's cool. You know, so incredible. And so seeing this, like, it's almost like I said, like, there's this concept of this energy being stolen, this capacity for that vulnerability being stolen. And despite all of the attacks against it, it's still running free and proud. And that's almost what makes this Wheel of Fortune, like puts this Wheel of Fortune in such like a weird, cynical state. This is really, really deep for me. This is so crazy, super deep, okay. Because, yeah, I mean, a big part of my sense of humor as a comedian, like a big part of my comedy, has always been being pretty blatantly misogynist. But as a woman that presents myself as a woman, especially one that presents myself in a heteronormative like way, a lot of that takes on this really deeply satirical kind of sense, where it's very ironic, and it's like, do you even realize what you're saying? Do you realize what you're promoting? And like, a lot of women don't like it. A lot of women find it very funny, but they find it tongue-in-cheek, right? And it is. A lot of men find it very funny, and they find it very, like, validating, and it is. And that's what it's supposed to be, too. What's really going on with my humor that way is that I am embracing, and like especially becoming a comedian, the more that I try to get on stage, or the more I try to get out with it, which I haven't been for months now, but the more that I do that, the more I have to step into fully embracing my power as a feminine, just as a woman, and especially as a single woman that like has something to say and has been trained that women shouldn't speak in public, and that women need to keep their heads down, and that women shouldn't be perceived as attractive that way, and that women are only for one man, and you know, all of these different concepts I was raised with. Like, I'm kind of fighting all of those all at the same time when I'm doing comedy, and really when I'm on stage at all, because I was even doing that when I was like the short time I was in a band. And I do it just like in general, but like that's like a big part of my artistic expression, is to, one, embrace me, embrace how I am, how I've been, who I was raised as, you know, my experiences, my past, my traumas, and then to not let them define me, and to embrace healing in those things and these forms of expression as a process of healing, and to kind of cultivate a not just even a community, but like a standard where, like a social standard of genuineness, of honesty about these things. I'm not a man-hating feminist, but I have been sexually assaulted multiple times by multiple men. I've been raped multiple times by multiple men. I've been abused multiple times by multiple men. I've, you know, been degraded, body shamed, you know, left pregnant, you know, treated, you know, I've been treated like second class in comparison to a man that lacks the skills that I have simply just because he's a man. I've received less pay just for being a woman. I've been pigeonholed into certain types of work that have nothing to do with my vagina, but because I have a vagina. Like, you know, I've had people perceive me one way, like positively because of that, and I've received the privilege of being a woman. I've also had it negative and received the negativities of that. I've had people perceive me as a trans woman quite often, actually, because of my misogynistic tendencies, those types of ways. Even when I'm doing it comedically, especially more and more, the more like common that those things become, the more that I have men that question my gender that way. And I've learned to embrace all of these things and to let all of these things, you know, people are going to think what they're going to think anyways, so I let those things speak for themselves. But I've also learned to embrace them in a way where I'm not defining myself by them. I'm rather just being quite aware of them in order to kind of use them to my benefit. But I still have a tendency of putting the feminine in the reverse in order to, what's the word? Not triumph, not trump, not, but like when you soldier for men, I care very much about men, not just because of the way I was raised, but because I've been abused so much and assaulted so much. In those experiences, what I found is that, like, the majority of those experiences, one, wouldn't have happened if I were a stronger woman, but that only helps for half of it. That only helps protect me, not other women who are weak and vulnerable even more than maybe I had ever been. So when it comes down to like the responsibility men have to these types of things, I care very much for men in that way. I don't blame them. I don't see them as monsters. I understand completely why certain men do certain things. A lot of people struggle with that. A lot of people just don't understand and find me crazy for that. But like, it's something that I care very deeply about, largely because I was raised by men that were doing that to me. So like, those were people that were closest to me. Those were family members. Those were my close friends. Like, those were people that I knew and loved, and who, despite very specific situations and actions, they also have these other qualities that make them really beneficial in our grand society. And so it's really like not wanting to isolate those things, but to create a space where those things can be properly acknowledged without being demonized, so that they can actually be processed. Nobody's going to want to receive a definition of themselves that they're a monster and that they're inhuman and that there's some type of demon-possessed evil spirit, right? Like, I mean, most people, I do know people actually that take pride in those things, but most people aren't that mentally ill, and aren't given to those types of things that way, and they make mistakes and they're processing their own issues, and like, there's so many nuances to these types of things that, like, also, I'm not gonna, if somebody really does think that that's where their power lies, I'm not gonna give them that power. I don't think that you're so special and so great that you can be able to overpower me with those things. You do, but you can affect my body, you can affect my person, you can affect my life in these different ways, but I'm not going to let you affect my soul. I'm not going to let you take my power away from me. Even when you think that you did, you're not going to succeed with those things. And that's why I think it's very important to not just fall on the angry, bitter feminist train about a lot of things. This is about to end because the memory. So I'm going to stop this here before we get to, this is where we're at right now, before we get to this third pile. And, sorry. And I will do the third pile and finish this up after I upload this one, so that we have the time for it. Okay. Thanks for being patient with me. This will all cultivate into something worthwhile, hopefully. It is for me, but I'll make it a good learning lesson. So bear with me, and I will see you in the next one.